The early summer sunlight in Chicago bathed the tree-lined streets of the Gold Coast district in a golden glow. My Lexus RX passed through the elegant stone gates of my parents' home. It was Sunday evening, time for the Griffin family's regular dinner. As I pulled up to the entrance, Mother Martha came out to greet me. As always, she was impeccably dressed in a two-piece suit with a Tiffany pearl necklace gleaming at her throat. "Ashley, you're a bit late today." "I'm sorry, Mother. The final wedding planning meeting ran longer than expected." I lightly smoothed my long brown hair as I stepped into the foyer. My navy Brooks Brothers suit projected the dignity befitting a senior manager at one of Chicago's top accounting firms. I had built my reputation through solid, diligent work. Entering the living room, I found Father Joseph reading the newspaper by the fireplace. His dignified bearing, befitting a former bank executive, made me instinctively straighten my posture. "Good evening, Father." "Ashley. Where's Brian?" "He said he couldn't make it today due to work." Just then, my sister Kimberly came down the stairs. Dressed in a Chanel dress with perfect makeup, she looked as though she had stepped right out of a fashion magazine. Well, big sister. "You're unusually late," Kimberly's voice carried a hint of sarcasm. "With only 2 months until the wedding, you still need planning meetings?" I simply smiled without answering. At the time, I paid no attention to what lay beneath my sister's words. In the dining room, dinner prepared with care by Maria, our maid, awaited us. Gibson's prime rib steak, seasonal salad, and Eli's special cheesecake. As family conversation flowed, I thought about my fiancé, Brian. As president of a real estate development company, he was a businessman with annual sales of $50 million. He drove a Bentley Flying Spur and was a well-known figure in Chicago's high society. Our engagement should have been a joyous occasion for the Griffin family. However, lately, there had been more and more concerning things. Ashley's smart, but she lacks feminine appeal. I couldn't forget Brian's cold smile when he said that at a recent dinner. "Leave the accounting work to your juniors. You make too many mistakes. Once we're married, I want you to quit your job. It's embarrassing to have my wife working." Such comments had been increasing lately. Even more worrying was the behavior between Kimberly and Brian. Their time alone together under the guise of the meetings had increased, and they frequently went out to dinner without me. Social media was filled with posts about shopping with my best friend. As the wedding approached, Brian's attitude grew increasingly cold. He started skipping planning meetings and stopped answering his phone. Then Kimberly suddenly announced, "Actually, I won't be able to attend the wedding." When they both arrived late to the rehearsal the day before, anxiety spread through my chest. But when I voiced these concerns, they were dismissed with, "You're being too neurotic." Kimberly was looking at her smartphone. For just a moment, I thought I caught a glimpse of who she was messaging. On the wedding day, the sky was crystal clear, as if offering a blessing from heaven. The spire of Fourth Presbyterian Church gleamed in the morning sun. This historic church, with over 150 years of history, had witnessed countless weddings of prominent families. And today was supposed to be our special day. That's what it should have been. Early in the morning, the makeup artist and hairstylist began preparing me in the bridal room. The pure white wedding dress was specially ordered from Nordstrom's bridal salon. Its delicate lace decorations sparkled softly in the light. "Ashley, you're the most beautiful bride ever." Mother's eyes welled up with tears as she fastened a Tiffany diamond necklace around my neck. "I wore this on my wedding day. And someday, your daughter will." Her words made my eyes well up too. My parents were truly happy about our marriage. Mother, in particular, had high hopes for my marriage to the son of a prominent family she had met through her high society charity work. Luxury cars began arriving at the church entrance one after another: Mercedes, BMW, Rolls-Royce. 400 guests representing Chicago's high society were gathering for this day. Local media had also arrived for coverage, their camera flashes sparkling. The floral arrangements were breathtaking. Pure white calla lilies and pale pink roses traced elegant curves from the altar to the ceiling. A deep red carpet lined the aisle, with white candles arranged neatly on both sides. Everything was perfect. 1 hour until the ceremony. "Have you heard from Kimberly?" I asked Mother. My sister hadn't answered her phone since last night. "Not yet. But don't worry. I'm sure she'll be here soon." There was a hint of anxiety in Mother's voice. By 11 o'clock, Brian still hadn't appeared. He might be caught in traffic, the planner suggested. However, Brian was supposed to have stayed at a luxury hotel just 15 minutes from the venue. Murmurs began spreading among the guests. "Where's the groom? I wonder if something happened." Father wore a stern expression as he continued calling Brian's groomsmen. But no one answered. With trembling hands, I dialed the number yet again. Finally, the call connected. "Brian. Where are you?" The ceremony was supposed to start. A cold laugh came through the receiver. "I'm in Hawaii. With Kimberly." My heart nearly stopped. What do you mean?" "I've decided to marry Kimberly. Consider your ceremony cancelled." In that moment, it felt like the world had stopped. I watched in the bridal room mirror as the color drained from my face. "You're joking, right?" "No, it's true. Actually, Kimberly and I have been involved since right after our engagement. She's much more attractive than you, and younger too. I never intended to marry you. I just wanted to see you humiliated." The line went dead. What happened next comes back to me like a nightmare. I collapsed in front of 400 guests. My white dress spread across the floor. Mother embraced me while Father trembled with rage. Reporters' flashes mercilessly illuminated the scene. "Miss, should we call an ambulance?" Maria, the maid's cry. Such humiliation. Father's low voice. Looking up at the church ceiling, the light through the stained glass seemed to mock me. The flowers at the altar lost their beauty in an instant, appearing empty and faded. A Chicago Tribune reporter was already beginning to broadcast the news on his smartphone. Waves of shock spread through the guests. Those two were together a lot lately. Poor thing. I tried to stand up, but my legs were shaking too much to move. Let's go home, Ashley. Mother put her arm around my shoulders. Her voice was heavy with sadness. 400 gazes. Media flashes. And the final message displayed on my phone from Hawaii. Looks like it's going to be a happy honeymoon. Love, Kimberly. That evening, in my condominium, I stared at my wedding dress. A single tear fell on the pure white fabric. But this wasn't the end. Rather, it was a new beginning. Something was awakening inside me. I remembered an important fact. For a week after the wedding, I had taken leave and stayed secluded. My smartphone was filled with hundreds of unread messages, including those from kind acquaintances, who sent photos of the two of them posted on social media. The two of them on Waikiki Beach. Toasting at an upscale restaurant. Kimberly's selfies showing off her new ring. Listening to the rain, I stared at my laptop screen. Logging into the accounting firm's VPN, I opened the files I had saved. The sense of unease I had felt when checking Brian's company's accounting data 2 days before the wedding was now taking a clear shape. This is strange. Frowning, I scrolled through the Excel sheets. Unnatural money flows that didn't look like normal real estate development company transactions. What particularly caught my eye was a series of payments listed as interior design fees. The recipient was EK.G, Design Works, Kimberly Griffin's company. This amount is clearly more than 3 times the market rate. I took screenshots and saved the data. My instinct as an accountant told me there was something there. The next morning, I called my colleague Sarah Johnson, a tax expert with IRS experience. Sarah, sorry, but I need your advice. Ashley. Are you okay? I saw you in the news. Yes, actually, this is a professional consultation. In a private room at the upscale restaurant, Chicago Cut, we met face to face. Sarah's eyes widened as she looked at the data I showed her. This is a typical pattern of money laundering. Using fake invoices to move company funds into personal accounts. And it's quite large scale. How large? Just estimating, over $5 million. Tax evasion and money laundering. This is something the IRS would take very seriously. A plan began forming in my mind. From that day, I began a thorough investigation. I worked my regular job during the day and devoted my nights to gathering evidence. Using all my knowledge and experience as an accountant, I analyzed transaction records to reveal the full extent of the fraud. New discoveries kept emerging. The unusual payments to Kimberly's company had started right after our engagement. The amounts paid under the guise of design fees were many times what the actual work would cost. Some of those funds were used for shopping at luxury brand stores, purchasing luxury cars, and as a deposit for a luxury resort in Hawaii. They planned this from the beginning. I continued taking notes. From the massive amount of data, I dug out decisive evidence one by one. Bank transaction records. Fake invoices. forged contracts, and traces of money laundering through Kimberly's company. During the investigation, unexpected testimonies also came in. Actually, I had my suspicions about those too. The reception venue manager hesitantly told me. They always stayed behind alone after the wedding planning meetings. Regarding Mr. Bryan and Ms. Kimberly, indeed. A luxury hotel front desk clerk testified. They had reservations many times. Always late at night. Even more shocking testimony came from Bryan's company's former accounting staff. I was fired because I noticed those fraudulent payments and asked questions. By August, my preparations were in their final stage. Security camera footage, hotel reservation records, restaurant receipts. All the evidence had piled up in thick files on my desk. And then, the decisive evidence. Airline tickets to Hawaii, booked 2 months before the wedding. The passengers, Bryan Coleman and Kimberly Griffin. I put on my finest Brooks Brothers suit and closed my laptop. It was time to head to the Chicago Federal Building. IRS Special Agent Robert Smith looked at me with a stern expression. The evidence files I had prepared lay on his desk. Gathering this much evidence must have taken extraordinary effort. Yes. But the truth needed to be revealed. Indeed, this is a serious tax evasion case. And the evidence is perfect. We'll move immediately. Outside the window, Chicago was bathed in twilight. The people passing by on Michigan Avenue didn't yet know that the empire of this city's famous businessman was about to collapse. Agent Smith signed the final document and said to me, "They're scheduled to return from Hawaii the day after tomorrow, I hear. Let's begin our preparations." On my way back, I gripped the steering wheel tightly in my car. This wasn't mere revenge. It was necessary punishment based on law and justice. The airport was filled with its usual crowd of arriving passengers. Dressed in a black Chanel suit and hiding my eyes behind sunglasses, I waited quietly in a corner of the arrival lobby. Everything was perfectly prepared to welcome the two back from their 2-week honeymoon. IRS investigators and police were already in position. Tipped off by leaked information, major media outlets had sent their reporters. Photographers from the Chicago Tribune, Sun-Times, and ABC News National Network were discreetly scattered around. Among the flow of arriving passengers, I spotted familiar silhouettes. My sister Kimberly appeared in her usual perfect fashion. A Louis Vuitton latest collection bag hung from her shoulder, with an Hermes scarf loosely tied at her neck. Next to her walked Bryan, looking smug in his new Tom Ford suit. Both carried multiple shopping bags from luxury brands. Evidence of their Hawaiian extravagance. My eyes fixed on the new ring gleaming on Kimberly's left ring finger. It was exactly the same design as the engagement ring that should have been mine. The two walked proudly like celebrities. They seemed to be enjoying the attention from those around them. And then, that moment arrived. Mr. Bryan Coleman, Ms. Kimberly Griffin. Agent Smith's voice echoed through the terminal. "This is the IRS. You're under arrest." A moment of silence. Then chaos erupted. "What is this?" Brian's voice cracked. Kimberly let out a scream-like cry. But handcuffs were already being placed on both their wrists. Police officers quickly surrounded them, and media photographers began snapping photos all at once. At that moment, I slowly removed my sunglasses and walked out in front of them. "Welcome back, Brian." "And Kimberly." "Ashley." The color drained from Brian's face. "How?" Kimberly's voice trembled. I calmly announced, $5 million in tax evasion and money laundering. All the evidence is in place. Even your honeymoon expenses were misappropriated from company funds. Impossible. There can't be any evidence. Oh, did you forget? I'm a senior manager accountant. And I was in a position to check your company's accounting data. All the irregular money flows are recorded. Brian's face turned pale. Kimberly nearly collapsed and had to be supported by a police officer. Why would you do this?" Brian shouted in anger. "Why, you ask?" I smiled quietly. "This is a legitimate legal procedure. I simply fulfilled my duty as an accountant. The betrayal at the wedding was a personal matter. But tax evasion is a crime." Reporters began asking questions all at once. "Is this accusation revenge for the betrayal on your wedding day?" I answered with dignity. "No. This is action based on my professional ethics as an accountant. Corporate tax fraud, money laundering through fake invoices, and using those funds for personal luxury. All of these are being prosecuted based on strict evidence." Agent Smith began explaining to the reporters. This case could be one of Chicago's largest tax evasion cases. Witness testimonies, bank transaction records, and decisive accounting data. The evidence is perfect. Brian and Kimberly were being led to police vehicles. People gathered in the airport lobby were filming the scene with their smartphones. "Please, help me." Kimberly turned back and cried out. For the first time, real tears were visible in her eyes. I didn't answer. I just stood there quietly. Through the airport's large windows, midsummer sunlight poured in. Chicago's skyline gleamed in the distance. I thought I heard the sound of a heavy door quietly closing in my heart. "Thank you for your work, Ms. Griffin." Agent Smith placed his hand on my shoulder. "We appreciate your courageous action." I took a deep breath and quietly answered, "So, it's over now." As I got into a taxi, I looked up at the sky. The midsummer sun was shining strongly, like the light of justice. In the summer of 2025, Chicago was entering a new season. From my new office on the top floor of a high-rise building facing Michigan Avenue, I could see the beautiful greenery of Millennium Park. The morning sun gently illuminated the potted plants by the window. Griffin Accounting Firm. The brass plate mounted on the door gleamed in the morning light. Using the reward money from the IRS whistleblower program, I had established my own independent practice. As a firm specializing in investigating corporate accounting fraud, We were already gaining recognition in Chicago's business world. Ashley, here are the materials for the 9 o'clock meeting. My secretary Jennifer entered, carrying the latest Apple laptop. She was the first staff member I hired for my firm. Thank you. Today's client is the major IT venture from Silicon Valley, right? The Wall Street Journal was spread out on my desk. It featured a recent interview with me. A woman's intuition in fraud detection, accountant who exposed ex-fiancé's $5 million tax evasion, speaks about the other side of justice. The events from a year ago had created bigger ripples than expected. The courage to expose corporate fraud from the inside. And the professional knowledge that made it possible. My firm was now receiving consultations from across the nation. The office door opened, and a familiar voice rang out. My brother Michael, dressed in a suit, entered with a cheerful expression. Now an independent lawyer, he also serves as a legal advisor to my firm. Michael, how's that case progressing? Yes, the verdict is in. The documents he handed me detailed what had become of Brian and Kimberly. Brian received a 5-year prison sentence in federal prison. The crimes, $5 million in tax evasion and money laundering. His real estate company went bankrupt, and all his assets, including his luxury car collection, were seized. The former darling of high society had lost everything. Kimberly received a 3-year suspended sentence. However, unable to bear the online harassment, she moved to a rural town in Iowa. She lost her interior design work and couldn't repair her relationship with our parents. The two divorced while Brian was in prison, and Kimberly stopped visiting him. Do you have any regrets? Michael quietly asked. No, none at all. This wasn't personal revenge. It was necessary punishment based on law and justice. I looked out the window. Lake Michigan's blue surface sparkled in the summer sunlight. Besides, my eyes fell on a photo frame on my desk. It showed a picture from a recent charity gala. Next to me was Dr. David Anderson, a cardiac surgeon at the University of Chicago Hospital, smiling warmly. Life has unexpected encounters in store for us. Just then, Secretary Jennifer came to announce the arrival of a new client. I tidied myself up and headed to the conference room. Outside, Chicago's summer breeze heralded the arrival of a new season. Sometimes, life's worst moments can become the best turning points. I knew this from personal experience. The humiliation at the wedding certainly hurt. However, it was also an event that awakened my true self. My professionalism as an accountant. And above all, the courage to stand by my convictions. Well then, shall we begin the meeting? I straightened my back and welcomed the new client. Outside the window, Chicago's skyscrapers gleamed in the summer sunlight. It was as if they were blessing my new life.